We've basically embargoed China. There is not going to be any more supply of many, many goods from China, right? We do that to pharmaceuticals. It's a very dangerous game to play in an ad hoc way.
So you put all this stuff in a blender, and I don't know what goes in this blender anymore, but what does it do to your economic forecast? Do you even, I guess you have to keep taking the best stab you can.
we keep analyzing and expanding our modalities for analyzing what the weighted average tariff rate is. But what we have, and this is almost stupidly simple, but what we have done is we've looked at the uncertainty index that Baker and Bloom put out from Stanford. Now, one of the bases of that index is actually the EIU database, our written work over the last 30 years. That's one component. Another component is the change in tax code that's anticipated over the next 2 years. Obviously, we have the TCJA coming up. That leads to a lot of uncertainty. And then the dispersion of economic forecasts. And when you use this index, you can see that it is correlated with recessions. You know that those recessions weren't, they were called after the fact, as NBER does, and probably that data ended up being revised down. So we know that this forecasts and corresponds with a reduction in CapEx, a reduction in consumer spending, and of course those two things together mean lower employment growth, eventually declines in employment.
Okay, where are you on jobs? The elasticity of all of these emotions, the crisis, whatever our listeners and viewers think, the bottom line is, I'm sorry, if I'm elected free beer, it comes back to jobs, right?
Yeah.
When do claims pop, or other series that Constance Hunter looks at?
Yeah, and I mean, we're expecting somewhat softer jobs in the April report, but that's going to be a really critical factor, I think, in when the Fed can actually go ahead and move rates, right? So as long as jobs are holding in there, and of course we know it's at best a coincident indicator, probably a lagging indicator in many instances, but they are still going to wait to see some weakness. So we're going to look at things like hours worked. We're going to look at the diffusion index. We're going to look at the composition of what types of jobs are being created, because state and local governments are probably going to pull back on some of the hiring they've done. They did make up hiring over the last 4 years since the pandemic, because they were under hiring in all the years following the global financial crisis.
Do you have a recession in your forecast?
We do have a recession in our forecast.
And how deep, and
it is not
characterize that?
So it is concentrated in the second and third quarters.
Okay.
We do think the Fed acts. We think the Fed goes 4 times this year. But it really just depends on if we can dampen down some of this uncertainty. If they could come out and be a little more clear in the way they communicate.
Oh, come on, you're dreaming. What are you, an economist? I mean, whatever anybody's political persuasion, Paul, am I right? We're hanging headline to headline?
Sure.
Yeah.
Lisa,
companies can't plan. Nobody does CapEx in this environment.
Okay, Lisa, to cut to the chase, China said we want Seattle. Boeing does a ton of work with Cathay Pacific and the rest, and now they're saying we don't even want the parts from Boeing. And I keep getting notes from smart people saying it's a whole supply chain thing.
Yeah, and the supply chain is so integrated across borders as well, right? I mean, we can't do manufacturing.
Your shop, EIU, owns supply chain analysis. What do you look at?
So we're looking at all the intermediate goods, right? So if you think about even manufacturing in the U.S., even the manufacturing we do here takes imported parts and puts that into the final goods, right? So this is like the policies of Juan Perón in Argentina in 1945, when he said, well, we're just going to make everything here in Argentina. Like, if we keep going down this road, it does not end well.